Hello, friends. I am Dr. Vivek, and today I'm going to discuss Aristotle. Aristotle, as you know, it's an important writer, Greek writer, and classical writer he is. And the theory part is we are discussing the theory part, and the first theory we discussed of Plato, and the second, the disciple, the pupil of Plato is Aristotle. So now we are going to discuss about Aristotle's theory of uh, theory part we are going to discuss, and his theory basically is what we are related with, whether the literature students are related with poetics. The Aristotle wrote a book, Poetics, the name of Poetics. So I'm going to deal with you guys this theory part and what he has written in this theory part, and what actually he has written in Poetics, that I'm going to discuss with you. First of all, theory of poetry. Theory of poetry, like Plato, Aristotle also points poet as imitator. I mean, some points are common, as his guru Plato has given his theory, but some point where he is not agree with Plato, that we'll discuss. Uh, is the same as Plato says the poet is an imitator. Aristotle also says the poet is an imitator. Aristotle believes that there is a natural pleasure in imitation, and he also believes that human beings have an instinct for harmony and rhythm. Means Aristotle and both these are the points. They guru and Sishya, they are agree with each other. He says that poet is an imitator, and there is an instinct nature in human in human beings, that they have an instinct for harmony and rhythm, and this instinct get reflected in metrical compositions, that is poetry. Poetry, we find there is a harmony, there is a rhythm, so it is reflected in, because he likes the human being's basic instinct is to like metrical composition, but human nature is having harmony and this rhythm. So it is reflected in metrical compositions, that is poems. For Aristotle, poetry is superior to history. He says that history gives us partial truths, whether poetry renders universal truth. Means Aristotle in his Poetics, he believes that his poetry is more superior to the history, where he gives the argument that history gives partial truth, but poetry gives universal truths. History tells us what had happened, whereas poetry reveals what may happen. So, according to Aristotle, poetry is more philosophical and higher than history. History records particular circumstances, whereas poetry is a production of facts along with the truth embedded in this. So history records particular circumstances, something had happened, where poetry is a production of facts. Poetry gives a production of facts along with the truth. There is facts along with the truth embedded in it, applying in all places and circumstances. So far, Aristotle's poetry is not like Plato, twice removed from reality, but it is an imitation of poetry itself. Here, it's very important that Plato says poetry is twice removed from reality, where we have discussed in Plato's part how it is twice removed from reality. But he is not believing in this fact. The Aristotle is not believing having this fact that poetry is twice removed from reality. But he says that poetry is an imitation of poetry itself. So function of poetry, Aristotle, the function of poetry is not only the pleasure embedded in it, but also teaching of morality. So it's not just poetry we don't read for pleasure. According to Aristotle, it has a teaching of morality. The didactic uh, purpose has come in the function of poetry. So now the important things which Plato discussed, sorry, this Aristotle discussed, that is catharsis, cathartic effect. What is the cathartic effect? Basically, is Aristotle believes that poetry makes an immediate appeal to emotions. It touches poetry touches the emotions. Tragedy, in particular, arouse the feeling of pity and fear in audience. Here, pity and fear is important in the context of Aristotle, where he says that pity is at undeserved sufferings of hero and fear for the possibility for same happening with human beings. There is pity. Why pity? When we see a tragedy, when we see a stage, we watch a stage, the act on the stage, we until and unless we don't feel pity and fear, pity for the undeserved suffering and fear for the possibility of the same being can happen with us as well. So it's important that sorry, what is coming, the both the pity and fears coming, then it gives you cathartic effect. Unlike Plato, Aristotle believes that arousal and accumulation of these feelings does not lead to any kind of harm, rather it leads to the purgation or catharsis of these feelings. Person get relieved when he or she watches a stage act in the theater. He or she gone through this pity and fear. If he or she gone through this pity and fear, he gets purgated. He gives give you an outlet, and person is relieved, as he says. Tragedy, in tragedy, where these sufferings that we witness are not our own, these emotions point a full and free outlet, and our soul gets relieved of their excess. As I said, a person, or when he or she watching the stage act, he gets relieved, and his soul had relieved from all the sufferings, all the traumas, the experiences, and he or she is having. So gives you an outlet. Tragedy poetry, being an imitative art, could imitate good actions of noble man or mean actions of bad man. So, in tragedy, you find both the good actions, as well as the mean actions of bad men. From former is born tragedy and the epic, and tragedy and epic are formed by the good actions of the nobleman, and the bad actions are the formed this later comedy and satire. Means he regards more to tragedy than the comedy and satire. Aristotle finds tragedy superior to epic because it can contain all epic elements in a shorter compass, with addition of music and spectacular effects, characteristics of tragedy, as Aristotle says. So here he gives more regard to the tragedy because uh, it can contain epic elements in a shorter compass. Means epic can come. Uh, the elements can come in tragedy, but tragedy cannot come in epic. Means it cannot be performed these on the stage. So we'll talk about this later on. Now, what he says, Aristotle says, when he's giving so much regard to tragedy, why it's so, how it is so, and that we'll see what the definition of tragedy. Tragedy is an imitation of an action. The definition is very important. What he says, tragedy is an imitation on action. What is happening, what the person is doing, what actions he or she is doing, that is imitation. Tragedy is an imitation of those actions. That is serious. The actions are serious, complete, of certain magnitude. in language embellished with each kind of artistic ornament, the several kinds being found in separate parts of the play in the form of action, not of narrative. Through this pity and fear, affecting the proper purgation of these emotions. It gives you proper purgation. This tragedy, when it's performed, when you watch, when the audience watch, they give you proper purgation of the emotions through pity and fear. The serious action Aristotle means a tale of suffering, arousing pity and fear. Action for Aristotle includes all human activities, deeds, thoughts, feelings. It should be self contained or complete, having beginning, middle, and end. This tragedy should have a proper beginning, proper middle, and proper end. The beginning should be such that nothing is added prior to this for the comprehension of an action, and should be such that nothing could come after it. It should be so complete that anything cannot be added or anything cannot be deleted from this tragedy. That should be so complete. This completeness implies organic unity of an action. The plot should have a certain magnitude and reasonable length which the mind can comprehend in one view or sorry within the required time. It should not be too long or too short. As I said, it should not be too long and too short because both these conditions pose a threat to its comprehension. Comprehension is very important, and aesthetic beauty. If you delete something, if you not, it has to not, if it's not having proper length, so it won't give you a comprehension and aesthetic beauty. The length should be such that it can be embraced by humanity and can unfold the event in a proper sequence with an appropriate beginning, middle, and end. The artistic ornamentation includes what should be there in the artistically in a tragedy. There should be a rhythm, harmony, song, and they should be employed as per the demands of the plot. Tragedy should assume the form of action. Tragedy, unlike an epic, can both be read and narrated, whereas an epic can only be narrated. So there, he gives more respect to more importance to tragedy rather than epic. The reason is tragedy unlike epic can both read and narrated, and this the epic only can be narrated, it cannot be performed. So tragedy is more important according to Aristotle than the epic. Thanks for watching, and it will lead to another part of Aristotle. In the second part, I'll be dealing with the constituent parts of a plot and all that. And thanks for watching. Thank you.